Are you curious about mindful and intuitive eating, but feeling a little confused on how exactly to get started? Maybe you want to ditch diets and take a more non-numbers based approach to nutrition, but you fear if you go down this path, then you're going to lose control and eat everything in sight. This is for my beginner, intuitive, and mindful eating nerds, and also for my book nerds as well. And hey, even if you're not a book nerd, fear not, I have a solution for you as well. Check the description and click on my link to start an Audible account. It has been one of the best investments I have made in my own continuing education journey, and it has helped me read so many books by listening to them instead of having to sit down and read them, because I don't know about you, but I am a busy person as well, and I really honestly half the time, or 75% of the time, listen to books on Audible, and about 25% of the time actually physically read them. But anyway, just wanted to give an option for those of you who think maybe you're not as much of a book nerd. Audible is a great thing, and you can get started today in the link below. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 4 book recommendations that I would recommend for you if you are starting to heal your relationship with food and take a more mindful and intuitive eating based approach to nutrition. So if you are new to this whole mindful and intuitive eating thing, I do have a free guide in my description box, and you can check out more about mindful and intuitive eating there. But essentially, mindful and intuitive eating is taking a more non-judgmental approach to foods where all foods can fit into your diet, and you listen to, honor, and relearn your body's hunger and fullness cues so you can eat in a more relaxed and low stress way. That's like my definition of mindful and intuitive eating in a very small nutshell. Now, if you want to go deeper though, this is what this whole video is for, and let's begin with book number 1. So book number 1, first and foremost, and this might be a given if you're not new to intuitive eating, but I had to throw it in there because it is essential, and that is the Intuitive Eating book. Now, this is one of the older editions, so I think the new one is like green and blue and white, so it looks a little bit different, but essentially similar information, and you can get this book on Amazon, or you can get the Audible version as well. This is the OG Intuitive Eating book, so it goes over the 10 principles of intuitive eating, and it is from 2 authors that are both dietitians and experts in intuitive eating. They actually coined kind of the terminology of intuitive eating. This one is just my go-to. It really goes deep into learning what type of eater you are, and what category you kind of fit in, and how you can move your way to an intuitive eater, or moving to relearning the intuitive eater within, because as the book states, we are all intuitive eaters naturally, but we actually unlearn some of the intuition that we have within us when we are born, when we are toddlers, first learning how to regulate food. It goes really deep into that, and it shares a lot of stories to kind of help you in the journey. Now, in the second half of the book, it goes really deep into kind of how to, self-regulate and practice things like gentle nutrition, even exercising, and doing so in a more intuitive way as well, so you're not feeling so rigid in your routine of like feeling like you have to do P90X every time that you exercise. Is P90X even still a thing anymore? I don't know. That's just my example of like something that's extreme exercise. I guess CrossFit is the new extreme exercise. Nothing against CrossFit, but that's like the intense workout, I guess, of this generation. And one of the chapters that I really like too is coping with emotions without using food. And again, it's from a very neutral lens, so none of it is like trying to shame you for eating one way or the other, but it's just trying to help you relearn and get curious about your body. And I think it's the best place to start if you're brand spanking new. I will say for the audiobook, I do have the audiobook version of this one, and it's not necessarily my favorite because it's not the authors who are narrating it. I wish it was, but it's a really boring, monotone person that's narrating it, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend that one specifically for audiobook, but if you can deal with a little bit of monotone voice, then you can tolerate it. Okay, book number 2 on the list of book recommendations as you start your mindful and intuitive eating journey is Intuitive Eating for Every Day. This book is also by Evelyn Tribole, which is one of the authors of book number 1, Intuitive Eating. And this book I really love because it's not really like a book that you sit down and, read like a novel or anything. You can, but it's kind of designed to be a calendar where you go throughout the year and every day you open up the book. So for example, day 12, the theme is loving boundaries. And it talks about the importance of setting boundaries with the people that you love. So for every single day of the year, you have a way to tangibly put to practice self-compassion, mindful eating, intuitive style eating, and also like she has like embodied affirmations, which I find really helpful because sometimes, if you haven't been able to tell on this channel, sometimes I ramble a little bit, and that's because I don't always have the words to put to something. So I love the affirmations because I feel like a lot of times I know what I should be doing, which is speaking more kindly to myself, but I don't really know how to put it into words. So this is really good for that because it gives you kind of a kinder language to speak to yourself when you were healing your relationship with food and body image. That one is also available on Audible, and Evelyn Tribole is the narrator of that book. So if you want to listen to it that way, she has a very calming voice. Highly recommend, and that's a good way to kind of like go through the book and hear the calming words in audio form if you don't have a whole lot of time to read it. But again, I would just go with the method of opening the book once every day and just reading one little excerpt, and that will help you improve your relationship with food without having to spend a whole lot of time like, reading a big giant book. All right, next up is Body Kindness by Rebecca Stritchfield. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. And she is also an RDN slash RD. If you don't know, RD slash RDN is the same thing. In recent years, we actually have the option as RDs to go by RD or RDN. It's just registered dietitian versus registered dietitian nutritionist. So in case you were wondering. This book has a little more of like mindful eating style things, like helping you get in tune with your senses and talk kindly to yourself and give yourself self-compassion. It also has a ton of different practices that you can follow, like, finding your 10 minutes of calm, finding your 30 minutes to savor your meal. It just helps you have these like tangible habits to know, okay, this is where I get started. Because I think the big problem with mindful and intuitive eating, or at least like the complaint that I hear, is that it feels so unknown as compared to a diet where you just know, okay, I'm calculating my calories or my macros, or I'm logging day in and day out and I have to hit this calorie goal. Like that, I think the comfort to that is that it feels tangible. And without that, it feels like you're kind of in the wild, wild west and you don't have anywhere to turn. So this book I highly, highly recommend. It's a pretty thin book. I think it would be a good thing, like if you're traveling, if you're on a plane or something and you just need like a small book to carry with you. Because the chapters aren't super long and you can just kind of read it pretty quickly and get some ways out of it that you can just like put to practice. It also goes into a lot of the psychology behind, why we make certain food decisions and emotional eating and things like that. So I think if that's something that you are working on, highly recommend this book. Really a solid one, and I'm honestly making my way back through it because it has a lot of little nuggets in it that are really important to absorb. So this one, really good one, especially if you need something just small and chill and like an easy read. Now, the last book recommendation that I have for you is actually, it's not necessarily related to mindful and intuitive eating, but it still applies, and here is why I recommend it in my beginner mindful and intuitive eating book recommendation video. It is Badass Habits: How to Cultivate the Awareness, Boundaries, and Daily Upgrades That You Need to Make Them Stick. This is by Jen Sincero. Now, I feel like her as an author, like you might either love her or hate her, because I've seen some like kind of mixed reviews on some of her books. But then when I started listening to some of her books on Audible, like You Are a Badass with Money, and then Badass Habits, I love Jen Sincero. She is a hoot, and she is a little unconventional. So if you're not a fan of that, or if you're not a fan of cursing, you might not love her. But I personally do. I kind of have like a interesting sense of humor. So like I like her as an author. But here is why I love this book and recommend it for getting started on mindful and intuitive eating. So biggest thing with nutrition, fitness, health in general that I think a lot of people really neglect or forget about sometimes. It's okay if you do. I definitely did it before as well. Is that you have to really learn how to be productive and optimize your habits to stick to goals. So it's easy for us to just create a goal and then want it, but that's not enough. There's not enough in between work for that to work out long term. You actually have to have that big picture goal. And of course, the desire to have that goal is amazing, and you need that as well. But the in-between steps to get there is habits. And she talks all about how to, again, like set those boundaries around your time and your energy and your space, and be able to prioritize the things in life that you want to accomplish and get done. So I am a nerd about productivity and all of that stuff and habits, as you probably know. If you are in my Mindful Muscles Academy, then you definitely know I nerd out about habits. So that is a good place to start. Another book that is about habits that many of you may have read out there that I didn't include in this book thing, which honestly was just like an oversight for me, Atomic Habits. Another great book on habits, and it's a great Audible book. Both Atomic Habits and this are read by the author, which again, I really appreciate for some reason. I just like when it's in the author's voice. It just feels more authentic to me. Both great audiobooks, highly recommend to get you started with habits, and you compare what you learn about mindful and intuitive eating with the habits, and I think it's gonna be like this stellar combo that's gonna help you as a beginner to really implement the habits that you need to get started on healing your relationship with food. It's easy to read about them, it's easy to theorize and know all the know-how about how to talk kindly to yourself, but it's a whole different thing to actually put it to practice. So that is my spiel about habits. Again, definitely check out the description box. I will link to everything that I mentioned today, including Atomic Habits, which for some reason I didn't bring in today's video. But let me know in the comment section if you want me to do another video on all the books that I recommend for habit-based and productivity-based stuff, because I do have a whole like category for that as well. And I think I could do a whole book review video on that. But those are my recommendations for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a like, and thank you so much for joining me for today. Consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed to the channel. I am so excited to get to know you. I'm a dietitian and personal trainer, and on this channel we talk about building a healthier relationship with food and fitness so you don't have to count calories and macros to get to the healthiest version of you. I'll leave a video right here that I think you'll love, and I will see you there.